good sight distance, and hopefully we can come up with a design that will help that work a little better and be a little bit safer. Now, let's go back a ways. Is anybody here from 1930? This picture was taken. This is an interesting picture we ran across. That dome you see on the right is First Presbyterian Church at ABRAM back in the day. And the interurban rail line used to run down through there. And on-street parking and different situations on the street than today. Yes, sir.
Are we having a problem with pedestrians being run over on ABRAM Street?
I don't know about the accident statistics.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Good question.
I haven't heard of any, but I don't know.
Thank you.
I will put that on the card to go back and see how far we are. I think it's somewhat it's a function of what is the history and what is the potential in moving forward. A lot of communities, it takes one accident and then people get kind of worked up about it. I don't know if that accident's occurred.
Yes, thank you, sir.
And here are just a few photographs of the corridor, one place or the other, just to refresh your memories of what some of the conditions are out there, eastbound or westbound, some of the sidewalk conditions and parking conditions. I think most of you are very familiar with this. And there's one of those situations we're talking about where some folks decided they want to cross and the signal's too far away, so they're going to try to cross, which is not recommended, but folks do it anyway. The concept design process that we've been working through for the last few months, tried to capture that process in one slide. And if you look at this little diagram, you see the goal at the top is vibrant destination of downtown Main Street. That's from the downtown master plan. That wanted a unique identity and appearance, wanted to also maintain a business-friendly environment, wanted to have good pedestrian facilities, sidewalks, meet ADA requirements and shade, provide a good level of safety for all users, which involves calming traffic for pedestrians in some situations.
Balanced mobility for all users. That's the part that's going to slow it all down.
Whether you're walking, biking, in a car, or disabled, can you get up and down and along the street? And really our goal is to understand all the needs of everybody along the corridor, everybody that works there, lives close to there, owns property there, travels through there. What do they want? What are their interests? And then come up with a street design that best balances all of those needs and all of those interests and serves all of the users into the future. And this sentence at the bottom is one of those things we keep asking ourselves. Is the ABRAM Street corridor a place for people primarily to drive through, or is it a place for people to drive to? And I think the vision from the master plan is that it needs to be more of a place for people to drive to. Yes, it's got to serve some traffic. The traffic has to drive to and from the properties and through the corridor. We also want it to be a place where people feel good about going there and parking and getting out and doing business and spending time. A little more detail about what's on the back wall there. Option A is 2 through lanes, one each direction, with the center lane for turns. Those turns change depending on where you are on the corridor.
Backwards.
It also allows parking, and generally where it is today. And there's a change in the parking I'll talk about in a minute, the design of the parking that we've recommended the city look at. But option A is 2 through lanes with a turn lane in the middle. Option B is 3 through lanes with a turn lane in the middle. And those 3 through lanes change. In some sections, it's 2 lanes one direction, 1 lane another. And you can move another place, it may be 2 this direction and 1 that way.
Oh, man.
But it's trying to best balance the traffic flow is how we came up with that design. But you can definitely drive through consistently. You don't have to hop lanes. But they do, a new lane will pick up in one block and maybe be in another block down the street. You'll see that on the back wall. Option C is 4 through lanes. It's very simple. 2 each direction with no turn lanes. But in the off-peak hours, the outside lanes become parking lanes. So you've got 2 lanes in the middle. And And one of the things you think about with that is somebody decides to stop and turn in a street or a driveway in that one lane. It's going to back up behind it. So every one of these options has some pros and cons.
More cons
But
than
we try to
pros.
boil it down to three basic, at least for tonight's workshop. Let's talk about the parking. Most of the parking today out there
See a
is
rear
angle
window
parking
happening.
or 90-degree pull-in parking that's right off the street. And you pull in and you back out and take off. This is a new design of parking that's increasingly in use across the country that really is considered safer. It's odd to look at when you first see it, but it's called reverse angle back-in parking. But it's almost like if it's parallel parking on the street against the curb, you pull past the space and then you back into it. But it's really hard to maneuver your car, get it close to the curb between those two vehicles. In this particular case, you just back in, but it's at an angle. And when you leave, your sight distance is much better.
Rear under heaven.
So I understand the concept, but what I'm envisioning is I pull up so that I can back into my parking spot, and the guy behind me pulls up behind me waiting for me to proceed, and now I cannot back into my parking spot, you see?
That happens in parallel parking sometimes too, and it's the same situation, I think, when you put your thing.
I'm trying to parallel park
You
front
may have to
end.
almost come to a stop before you get to that space and get that person stopped, and then do your maneuver. But I'll admit, that is one
Oh,
of
he
the, that's not
admits
as
it. Good.
easy to get in as the other style of angle parking.
This is
But it's a
insane.
lot easier to get out with that stuff. And where it's been put in, I know Austin has some, several cities across the country, it seems to be working pretty well. So I've asked the city to consider that. I think it's a legitimate design and could end up being safer and easier to use. Now, just a simple look at the comparison of the options. That top one across there is the existing condition, the top row. The next one is option A, which is 2 through lanes with the center turn lanes. Next one is option B, 3 through lanes with the center turn lanes. And option C is the 4 through lanes we were just talking about with no turn lanes. And you notice, I'm going to talk about each one just briefly, but existing condition, the sidewalks range from 3 to 5 feet. There's some sections missing, some ramps missing, and some sections that aren't wide enough. They have holes in the middle of the sidewalk, and they don't provide nearly the level of pedestrian service that you want. Streetscape is limited to a few blocks with not much opportunity without what's out there today to add much more, at least not in a consistent fashion for sure. Most of the streets got lighting, but a lot of the pedestrian lighting is limited and it's dark at night, a lot of the sections. And there's about 73 spaces that are accessed from the street, most of it angle or pull in. Lots of different designs of parking today. And option A, which is the top row and all the way back there, that's 2 through lanes with a center turn lane. The sidewalk is never less than 5 feet in that design, but it does get up to 12 feet in some sections, and it's continuous, north side and south side, the entire length of the project, with all the ramps in place. So it meets all the regulations and requirements. It's a much better walking environment. It's more comfortable and safer. Streetscape, all those blocks are designed with 3 to 5 foot wide streetscaping area. There's shade trees consistently, and there's benches and other amenities as the city deems to be needed. And the roadway is lit to the city's standards, pedestrian lighting and also street lighting. And under that design, there will be 74 spaces, 4 of them be parallel, which parallel to the curb, and 70 of them will be reverse angle back-in parking. And if the city chose to go the old style, it would still be about that same number of parking spaces. Option B, which is 3 through lanes, and a center turn lane. The sidewalks range from about no less than 5 and up to 11 foot. They're continuous north and south with ramps. Most blocks have 4 to 12 foot streetscaping area with shade trees and benches. Same lighting situation. Lose a few spaces, 62 total spaces, 7 of them parallel and 55 with reverse angle back-in parking. And option C, which is the 4 lanes, 2 each direction, or turn lanes. The sidewalk is continuous 6 foot on the north side for the entire length of the project, 8 foot on the south side, and all the ramps should be put in. There's really not much room left after you do that for streetscaping to stay within or really close to the existing right of way. That's sort of the minimum impact. Gets into pedestrian improvements, but it does that primarily by taking away one lane. But there's not anything left really for streetscaping. Roads would be lit to standards, and all the existing angle parking would be removed, but the parallel parking would be provided on the outside travel lane during the off-peak hours. And it's about twice as many spaces as you see. So it adds a lot of parking, but it's parallel and it's not there during the peak hours. So that's a simple comparison of what these options are on the back wall. What do we want from you, and what else we want to do tonight? We really want to know what you think. Yes, sir.
In that schematic, where is the city expecting the bicycles to compete? Because we're going to have them coming in from UTA, we're going to have them coming in from people passing through. So are we competing with street traffic or with cycle traffic?
It depends on what kind of bicyclists you are, I suppose, but there.
Oh my God,
hike and bike
I can't
lanes,
believe
the
this.
city's hike and bike lane does not provide bike lanes on ABRAM, so that none of these options have bike lanes in it. It would have to be mixed traffic. The bikes would be with traffic or in the street, yes. The same, the hike and bike plan that was, I guess, discussed and approved a year or two ago has lots of streets designated for bike routes and bike lanes, but ABRAM was not one of those. I'd have to go back to that process, man. And at the end of the day, it wasn't included. There are parallel routes. So other UTA border has bike lanes planned, and some other streets. So that would be probably the preferred if you're a commuter bicyclist, probably where you'd want to be. But please put that on here. We expected to get some of those questions. We put it in the question and answer. I can't answer that why, but that was the decision that was made in the past.
Right, I'm familiar with the city's output on that, or you on that. The reason I was asking is just accessing the business is more than a throughway. So,
And we, please write that question down in the comment. Thank you. So, input. We want all the input that you've got to provide. And then, considering that input, the city, and we will help the city come up with a recommended design concept that takes the city council somewhere. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, revisiting the bicycle question. In your professional opinion, would you venture to say that one plan is safer for bicyclists than that? Without adding bike lanes, would any one plan be considered safer for bicyclists than others? Because even without planning for bike lanes, you look at cities in the Metroplex encouraging bicycling to work, such as Fort Worth just had a bicycling to work day. So would one of these plans be more conducive to bicycle safety?
You're trying to put me on the spot.
Well, I'm not intending to, but we'll put that on a card.
I understand. I'm standing up here. I'm very good. Generally speaking, the slower the traffic is, the better the situation is for the bicyclist, and sometimes the wider the lanes. And so it's not an absolute safe or unsafe.
Great.
It's
Traffic jams.
shades
Love
of
it.
safeness in here. And I think any one of these has some strengths and weaknesses for the bicycle.
All of them.
And that's what we need to look at and go forward. But I can't say right now. I'd say that the faster the traffic, generally speaking, the less desirable it is for the bicycles. But anyway, considering the input that we get tonight, we'll work with the city to develop a recommended design concept for council approval. And again, these are just 3 concepts that have been developed to initially get your feedback on. And the city will hope to go forward with final design later this year and next year. And then get into any right-of-way acquisition that may be needed and utility relocation next year and maybe into 2016. And the project, whatever it ends up being, would end up being probably 2016, 2017. Yes, sir?
Any thought been given to not doing anything at all?
That's what I was going to ask.
Or why change?
I think you need to write that down. I think the plans, it's sort of the downtown master plan, those other things, the bond issue have all led toward there being a project.
The problem is I don't really visualize benches that people are going to use. The only people that are going to use it are the bums that are down there.
I think, well, look, I'm not a land use person, but I really think the city is looking for that ABRAM Street corridor over time to be a different place. And you see some new businesses. I think they have plans for more. There's the city center redevelopment project that's being discussed. And I think possibly ABRAM Street in 10 or 20 or 30 years is going to be a different place than it is today. And this project
Just
will
block
be
it
a
off
part
and we
of
won't drive
changing
on it.
that. And you can believe it or not, or like it or not, but that's what these plans are trying to work towards. The city staff has brought that up, not yet, this has not been discussed. Yes, sir.
I just need to say that a lot of these plans that you're referring to, there's a lot of people in this room that didn't support them. Like the thoroughfare plan, for example, I see many people in this room who didn't support that. So
Bingo.
we keep saying that this is something that everyone seems to be in agreement with, but there's a lot of people here who I think aren't. He brings up a good thing that I am kind of curious about. Why is one of the options not on here to maintain what we currently have?
Oh, he's bringing in the big guns now. The big guns.
I think like most plans in the city of Arlington, I'm not real sure there's ever unanimous support for any of those plans, so there's always going to be the people who support and don't. When we took this issue to city council in the design contract, what we were charged with is to come up with 3 options as per our contract that was approved by city council. That's what we're here today is to present. And the decision at that time was we won't look at just a 2-lane option and we won't look at doing nothing. Even though that's why we have the comment cards, that's why I think we stress that quite a bit this evening, is we want your input. And if the will of the people is, and the desire is to leave it alone, don't do anything, that's what we want to hear from you. We were charged with presenting 3 options. Our charge tonight is to present those to you. You give us your input along with these 3 options, and if you have other ideas, that's what we're here for. Again, what we want to do is hear the comments, and we'll put it on the website. Everybody will see the questions and the responses. That way we're all working from the same page. If you want, let Marshall finish. He only has a few more slides. What I'm going to do is, after Marshall's done, we'll give about 5 minutes to some general questions. If there's really project-specific questions, let's really confine that once we break out and go to the different segments that are on the back wall. That way we have the detail and we can answer those by exactly what's on those drawings again. So if you don't mind, let Marshall finish, and then I'll take a few questions when he's done.
Anyway, just moving on from this last slide about the possible progress of the project from tonight forward.
The dude looks
Just to make sure that you're understanding what's here on the back wall, section 1 is the red section from Cooper to midway between College Street and West Street. That's the red section there, and that's in that back left corner. And moving across, the green section is to the right, which is from the mid-block of College and West Street to South Center Street. The blue section, which is the one in the middle, is from South Center Street to East Street. And then the 4th section is orange, and that's from Southeast to Vinson Street. And the yellow section is from Vinson over to Collins. So if your major area of interest is in any one of those, you go to that section, go to any of them, but that's where, that's how the stations are set out. And when you get there, you'll see this on the wall, and option A, which is that 2 3-lane option, is on the top. The 3-lane option, option B, is in the middle, and the 4-lane option, with no turn lanes, C, is on the bottom. So you can look for that section of ABRAM, 3 different design options, and those are 3 concepts that we developed for tonight's meeting. And so again, what we need from you tonight is to visit those stations, review those designs, and there are typical sections there. And then review the question and answer handout that I think you've all got. And then ask any other questions you have at the station. Give us your input. You can also email things to the city or email that or mail that back to the city. These cards are set up so you can fold them, throw a stamp on it, put it in the mailbox, and they'll go right to the city. And we ask for your comments back by May 30th. You can leave them in the box tonight over there on the table, the sign-in table, or mail them back and get them back for any comments by the 30th. And as Keith mentioned earlier, the workshop documents, everything you see here tonight, past traffic study, is going to be available at the city website, arlingtontexas.gov/ABRAM. So that's it. Let's come back up. If you want to pick the slide up.
The question was, can you define peak hours? In the evening, I think it's generally 4 to 6, and AM is typically 7 to 9. But it does vary.
So his comments were based on those?
I couldn't hear you, sorry.
It's the morning rush hour and the evening rush hour, and that kind of moves around a little bit between 7 and 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the evening.
Okay, thanks.
At Opinion Arlington, our website, opinionarlington.com, we're running a survey. I don't know if you've seen it on ABRAM Street, asking people what they think about the options. And we included leave the street where it is. And 80% of the people that are taking the survey, on Survey Monkey, say leave it the way it is. And why doesn't
I know.
why don't you do the same thing? Your word is different, I'm sure. But mention the 3 options we see here, plus leave the street the way it is, and put it up on the city, announce it on the emails that you send out every day about things going on in Arlington, and you should get a lot of feedback. And that should give you a lot better indication than even this meeting, because most people don't have time to come to a meeting. But I assume a lot of people get the city emails and would take a survey if we would do it.
Very good question. Comment is could we use Survey Monkey and then give another option, which is basically leave it alone. We'll look at that option. I think it's important when you discuss these alternatives to be able to actually touch and see them. So some people are going to vote to stay, to do nothing because they don't have because of lack of information. But again, we'll look at that option.
Are any of these parking fees, on-street parking involve meters?
The question was, does any on-street parking consider installing meters? Not at this time. It's kind of just rotate back and forth.
Okay, Grand Prairie did this very same thing in the 70s. My first question is, did you consider that any of the options and our changes that happened in Grand Prairie when they closed, which is, I forget the name of it, but it's basically the division between East Grand Prairie. But anyway, and they closed an area similar to this. Now, I remember that situation, and after they closed it, the businesses were not getting any business anymore, so they rechanged it. Now, they didn't go back to the original condition, and they have what they have right now, which is who knows what it is. But the question is, did you review Grand Prairie's attempt to do this very same thing, almost on the same street?
The question was, I think, did we review what Grand Prairie did on a very similar project? The answer is no, we did not. But we have hired a consultant who's done this nationally throughout the country. So we're depending on his expertise since he's done this throughout the country. Yes, ma'am.
Has this same item not also been put in place in Grapevine and has been wildly successful?
Yeah, there's success stories of this all over the country. There's probably some projects where it didn't turn out quite as successful. So again, this section of Arlington and this section of ABRAM is unique. It's somewhat good to learn from what other cities did, but there's no guarantees, good or bad, what happened in other cities will happen here. So, again, yes, ma'am.
Well, when you said 2017, for the timeline of any of these projects that are, if they're put into play, have you taken any consideration to the businesses and what they're going to do to the businesses during that time that the project is being torn up and reconstructed?
The question was, do we take into consideration how the construction of the project is going to impact the business? Yes, we do. We have ABRAM Street projects. There's 2 sections of ABRAM that are about to go under construction, east of 360, west of 360 over to Stadium Drive. Those, we work with those businesses to provide temporary access. Does it disrupt those businesses when we're doing those projects? Yes, it does. But yes, that will be heavily taken into consideration.
Cooper Street,
yes.
Cooper Street, it put a lot of people out of business because it took so long. So if you've got a timeline of like 2017, which I doubt that would really come to play in 2017, these poor businesses that can't afford to not have the businesses come in because everybody's going to avoid them.
We had that challenge with every project in Arlington when we had to rebuild a project that's along the business corridor. Yes, sir.
Have you had any businesses express interest in coming into downtown Arlington based upon your proposals at this point? The question behind that is, we were shown a similar project about 8 or 9 years ago regarding Cowboy Stadium and all of the development that would be going up and down Division Street and down Collins Street. And since that palace to sporting access has been put in place, I have yet to see one shopping plaza, one railroad track for the trains that were on that proposal, any of the things that we were promised as taxpayers that would come to play. So what promises can the city give us that this is going to make a difference when $1 billion stadium could not?
Generally, the question was, with this concept, that we had any interest from the business community to come and move along this corridor. First of all, the business community, this is the first rollout of this plan. So I'm not really on the economic development side of the city of Arlington, so I can't say for sure what's in the works. Again, that's private. Industry will decide that, whether they like this and it's a place they want to be. There are no promises. I think there can't be promises at this point what it will bring.
Can I just do a little comment on that? Is it's a different dynamic when you want a business sitting next to Cowboy Stadium where you're going to be overflown by traffic constantly, and people are going to try to use your parking lot as where they park for the Cowboy Stadium, basically not allowing your traffic through. Or would you like, if you're a bicycle shop, or if you're a little restaurant, or if you're a whatever in a downtown area that has walking traffic next to a college, which would be more likely to get you customers?
Again, if the businesses aren't coming down to this area or showing that they have any interest in here, where are the people walking to?
Okay, let's move on. 2 more questions. One on this side.
Some cities have used the paint to designate areas before they go to all of the expense of the construction, which involves a lot of times shutting down businesses or slowing them down so much. So they have used paint to designate lanes and or bicycle lanes or whatever they need, and or some kind of like the big balls or other things to designate the lanes instead of doing the full-blown construction. Have y'all even considered that? And also, is there any feeling right now for what the current business people who have businesses there and the people who work down there, what their input has been?
I think there's 2 questions. Is that we looked at basically temporary striping before we do a reconstruction project like this. And the second question was, what input have we received from the business community? Regarding temporary striping, we have not looked at that because one of the challenges we're trying to create a pedestrian environment that wouldn't allow us to gain additional right-of-way or area to put in more of the continuous sidewalks. As I think you heard from the presentation, The challenge of this corridor is the sidewalks are all discontinuous, they don't meet ADA standards. Temporary striping would accomplish that. Regarding the businesses, I think there's quite a bit of support in the community, from the business community, to do this project.
One of the concerns that you kind of understand yourself is that there currently is disconnections in the sidewalk. So we're talking about approving some upgrades that, I mean, are we guaranteed that if we approve this, that in 10 years, we won't be facing a similar problem, except now our sidewalks are bigger? The question I really wanted to ask, though, is has the city looked at the current street that we have now and said, what can we do with this current street at its current capacity to improve pedestrian access? Have you done that?
The question was, have we looked at the current street, what can be done to improve pedestrian access? Yes, that's the reason we went and did the right-of-way survey, so we know exactly where the current right-of-way line is. There's places where we could not build a new sidewalk without acquiring right-of-way. The 4-lane option kind of does that, but keep in mind, this roadway is going to have to be, we could do nothing somewhere down the road because of the aging of the roadway. This roadway has to be rebuilt. It's not going to last forever. We typically design new roadways in the city of Arlington, a design life of about 50 years. This roadway's been overlaid and overlaid. It has some challenges for cross slope, things like that. So at some point it needs to be rebuilt. Yeah.
Then rebuild it.
We're about to, Mitchell Street's going to have maintenance this summer, and ABRAM Street, we've already opened bids on ABRAM Street east of 360. We've already opened bids on ABRAM Street from Stadium to 360. Those projects will be under construction roughly 60
Where
days.
were those
Again, there will be public meetings for that. Again, all very good questions. Let's break out and go over the different segments that you're interested in. Consultant, city staff.